So what if the US military just decided to launch a secret raid to capture the president of Venezuela? Sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, right? Well, that's the incredibly detailed, hypothetical scenario from our source material that we are going to break down right now. So let's dive in.
Okay, but before we jump into the deep end, I've got to make something crystal clear. Everything we're about to talk about, it's a fictional what-if scenario. This is purely a breakdown of a hypothetical event from the source. It is not a news report. Super important to remember that.
All right, so the source doesn't waste any time. It drops us right into the middle of the action. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. on January 3rd, 2026, and the mission name? Operation Absolute Resolve.
And the precision of this thing, it's just incredible. It's a total blitz. You've got helicopters flying just 100 feet over the ocean to stay off the radar. At the same time, a cyber attack plunges the entire capital city, Caracas, into darkness. Then, boom, airstrikes take out all the radar and air defense systems. And in all that chaos, Delta Force commandos are already breaching the president's residence. They're in his bedroom and have him captured in, wait for it, less than 5 minutes. I mean, just a shockingly fast and decisive strike.
And this quote, this really tells you everything. The fictional US president is watching this whole thing unfold on a live feed from the White House, and he says, I watched it literally like I was watching a TV show. Think about that. It's not this heavy, complex act of war. It's presented more like detached primetime entertainment. Just wow. Okay, so the raid is a success. The president is captured, and the world is just reeling in shock. Now the source material pivots. It moves on from the what happened to the much bigger question, why? And it all boils down to two really pressing questions that are going to guide the rest of this breakdown. I mean, seriously, what could possibly justify one country just going in and kidnapping the leader of another sovereign nation? And maybe even more important, what happens to the whole international order when a country shows it can just do that? These are the huge questions the source wants us to wrestle with. So let's get into the justification. The source starts with the official story, the public reason given for this absolutely unprecedented military move.
So the official line is that this wasn't an act of war at all. Nope, it was just law enforcement. The administration in this scenario points to a real-world indictment, one from the Southern District of New York, that charges Maduro with narco-terrorism. So the spin is, hey, we weren't invading, we were just making an arrest.
But this is where the source starts to poke some holes in that official story. It raises a really important question. If this is really all about stopping drug trafficking into the US, is Venezuela even the right target?
And when you look at the data the source provides, things start to look a little off. Get this, in 2018, Guatemala was exporting around 1,400 metric tons of cocaine. The indictment against Venezuela, it's for 200 to 250 tons a year. So you have to ask, if this is truly about drugs, why go after a country that's responsible for just a fraction of the problem? It doesn't quite add up, does it?
And then the source adds another layer to this. Think about the deadliest drug crisis in the US right now, fentanyl. That stuff is primarily coming from Mexico with chemicals from China. And Venezuela? They have no known role in that trade. So again, this really undermines that whole war on drugs justification, right?
Okay, so if the drug story is shaky, what's really going on here? The source argues that the official reason is just a smokescreen, a cover for something much, much older, a grab for natural resources. And when you're talking about Venezuela, that really only means one thing. Oil. That's the answer, according to the source. And we're not just talking about a little bit of oil. Venezuela has the largest proven crude oil reserves on the entire planet. We're talking 303 times billion barrels. That's more than Saudi Arabia. It's more than the US. Just look at the scale of the prize we're talking about here. It's staggering.
And the source gives us a little backstory here, a quick history lesson. For a long time, everything was great because US companies had huge operations there. But then in the early 2000s, President Hugo Chavez came along and nationalized the entire oil industry, basically kicking those companies out. And that, the source argues, is the real root of all this tension.
And if you had any doubt, this quote from the fictional president said the day after the raid just lays it all out there. He says it was the greatest theft in the history of America. They took oil away from us. Did you catch that? He's framing Venezuela controlling its own resources as a theft from America. That pretty much reveals the true motive right there, doesn't it?
So, okay, we've talked about the motives, but what about the consequences?
The source digs into how an action like this would just completely shatter the rulebook, both at home and on the world stage.
And the backlash described is immediate, and it is global. And we're not just talking about the usual suspects like China and Russia. We're talking about key neighbors in Latin America, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and even European allies like Spain. They all come out and condemn this, calling it a super dangerous precedent for a world that's supposed to be based on rules.
The source gets specific about the laws being broken. On the home front in the US, the Constitution says Congress has to approve a war. That didn't happen here. And then internationally, you've got the UN Charter, which basically says you can't use military force against another sovereign country. So according to the source, this operation is a clear violation on both fronts. No question.
And this brings us to the final, and maybe the most chilling part of this whole breakdown. The source zooms way out and asks, what does the world even look like after something like this? What kind of dangerous new precedent has just been set for everyone?
The source has a name for this: New Age colonialism. Think about it. It's not like the old days of planting a flag and claiming a country. It's slicker. It's about using your military might to grab another nation's valuable resources, all while hiding behind some made-up but plausible-sounding excuse. And here's the ultimate warning. An action like this wouldn't just be a one-off thing. It basically gives a green light to every other major power out there. You know, if the US can do this for oil in Venezuela, what's to stop Russia from doing something similar for natural gas somewhere, or China for rare earth minerals? It's basically a recipe for total global chaos.
And so the source leaves us with one final haunting question. What actually happens when the most powerful countries in the world just decide that the rules don't apply to them? There's no easy answer to that, but it's a question that's absolutely crucial to think about for the future of, well, all of us.